Hello, I'm Ellen Vandermeide, Head of Enrichment Programs for the Kirk Newman Art School, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Jackson Willits. Jackson is our current painting resident and is a graduate from Kalamazoo College with a BA in studio art and a focus in painting. Jackson's work seeks to combine abstraction with portraiture to address the subconscious and underlying reality affecting human perception and experience. And now I would like to invite Jackson up to the podium.
Hello, thank you. I've enjoyed everyone's presentations a lot up to this point. I'll finish us off. Okay, hold on. So yeah, thank you, Ellen. My name is, in fact, Jackson Willits, and I am and have been the painting and drawing resident this year. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about a couple things that influence where I'm at now and my background in art and my background in my personal life. I found it fitting to put some self-portraits that I've done in the last few months, my own identity and my own image, and yeah, my life as me has been, something that I kind of default to as a portrait artist, and so I'm always interested in that. So this is where I wanted to start, but I'll be moving into, like I said, my background, past works, and then just my more current works here at the residency. So I'll start with my background. So I've been lucky enough to be born and raised to a great family in St. Paul, Minnesota. This picture here I found when doing some deep diving. I was really pleased to find it. It's features all my immediate family, but also my father and my grandfather, who are the two biggest personal artistic influences in my life. I'll get more into the inspiration and the influence that they've had specifically later on, but I thought this was a great image to kind of tie my background to. So as far as my education goes, I think that certainly plays the biggest role into my track as an artist so far. I went to a school called Great River in St. Paul, Minnesota from the age of, it was from 5th grade through to 12th grade. And it was a Montessori school, which, if you're not familiar, is a fairly alternative approach to education, not commonly practiced in high school age schools, but it had a really profound impact, I think, that I'm not always aware of, but that as I've grown older, I think I've become a little bit more aware of. I meant to time myself because I tend to ramble, but oh, here it is. But I have come to realize that the approach of the Montessori education has been really influential to me. The Montessori theory is very much tied towards independence and like an individualistic, creative approach to education. So I was always given a lot of freedom to explore my own interests and a lot of time to organize for myself. I think as I was in my later high school years, we were also really pushed to kind of create our own, create our own education. So we structured a lot of time for ourselves to create our own interests. I'm not sure. But this was the first kind of time that I really got introduced to art classes. So I was introduced to art critiques and thinking critically about my art. Technically, I wasn't learning how to do the things that I maybe thought I would be taking art classes, but I learned how to, talk about it in a community and in a group. And I thought that this was really interesting. But at the time, I wasn't creating art very dedicatedly. It was just kind of something that I would do automatically. And it was just like a relaxing hobby for me. But I ended up going to Kalamazoo College, and I did take art classes. I'll get into kind of where I started there, but it was there at K College that I really realized that I could be passionate about the practice of making art and making a body of work. So that was really what got me started, and I think got me here more than anything was my education thus far. So let's talk a little bit about the influence. I mentioned my father and my grandfather, both as lifelong artists, and being surrounded by their work was always it was always a part of my life and a part of my like domestic life. My mom was always I always felt that she understood my grandfather to be an artist as a person. It was really a part of him. He lived in Michigan his whole life and painted the landscapes here, and he was a professor at Western University, and I was always surrounded by that, and that was always kind of part of my life. And my father, while he wasn't a career artist, was a passionate artist as long as I've known him, and he showed me that even if you're not working as an artist to pay the bills, it was something that you can do because you love, and he still does it, and he supports me a lot. So I appreciate him and his influence that he's had on me. I featured a picture of mine that I'll get into some of my later works here in a sec, but let's see. So the image on the left is the first drawing that I did during one of the first drawings I did during my drawing class at Kalamazoo College. So I hadn't had any experience with any technical sort of classes, and I wasn't really sure how I would fare. I was much more used to drawing things that felt automatic to me, like very crazy, whimsical, like fantastical imagery like this drawing on the right. I was always much more in favor of, doing things that felt incredibly spontaneous in art. And so that was kind of what was most natural to me. But I got to K and I really realized that I had it in me to really focus on detail and find joy in like the subtlety of bringing things to life. So this was an exercise to take one object and draw it from 5 different angles. And it was the first time I really felt like you can take something very mundane and completely like lose yourself in it and become I don't know, it made me feel like an artist in a way that I had never been before. So that was really monumental for me, I think. And then I went on at K to create my first real body of work for my senior project. I bounced around with a lot of different ideas, thinking more contextually about various areas of my life, but I always ended up coming back to portraiture and what I kind of thought about as a relationship between the human and the abstract. So I would draw portraits, I would draw the human body, and I would draw its relationship to non-physical, like abstract geometrical force. And while at school, I was never able to really satisfy my definition of what this relationship was. But I just found it to be more than anything just a manifestation of complex emotion and energy and potential, various things that I think are innately impossible to really grasp. And so this relationship between the physical, the organic, the human body, the human experience, and this non-physical experience reality was something that I was trying to convey, and I really found a lot of joy in doing so. So I created a lot of work for this, and I really, really enjoyed doing so. And yeah, it was the first time I, like I said, was able to make a body of work, and that made me think, like, I can do this again. I'd like to pursue another year-long program like this possibly. And I looked into the residency and found that was going to be probably my best option, especially in Kalamazoo, to do so. So I moved on working here, and it's been really open-ended for me to work on whatever I wanted to, and I think I've taken the opportunity to paint everything around me. And yeah, if I've ran out of ideas, I've just switched things up and tried something else. So for the first time, I was really focusing on doing things like landscapes. And while the subject matter was largely irrelevant, it gave me a chance to experiment with things like the surface of the canvas, the surface texture of paint, and light and color, and it just opened me to painting in a new way. And it helped me to just kind of ground where I was coming from and what I was doing with my art. So I was grateful to get the chance to try things like this. I started painting with oil. I had never done that before. Yeah, so a lot of new things like that were coming out of me at that point. So, but then I ended up kind of, I still wanted to focus on my kind of relationship to the self and to the human subject matter that I had been working on before. And, I was working with oil now instead of acrylic, and I found the process to be new, the subject matter similar, but the process to be kind of refreshing. So this was kind of my comfort zone and what I wanted to kind of pursue indefinitely. Like at the time I was thinking like it was just something I could keep doing, and more freshness would come just by trying it over and over. And yeah, I found a lot of meaning in things like, I was thinking about like posture, gesture, and how one presents themselves, perceives himself, and like connects with themselves, like copes with life through, one's taking care of oneself, or so small things like just like the gesture of somebody gesturing to themselves, or holding themselves, like things like this. While I did do pictures and paintings of people in scenes or with other people, most of my work tended to be figures like these two, like these three, that are painted in atmospheric, ambiguous space with geometric, abstract elements that I talked about as being more like a force, an ambiguous force. This kind of feeling and way of exploring the human experience was just meant to be very personal. Like it's about the experience with the individual, not about the experience with the environment, with other outside agents, forces like that. So that seemed to be kind of the main, the center of what I was thinking about at this time, was that relationship to self. And yeah, I really enjoyed taking a lot of the classes here and learning about various technical elements that I hadn't known about before. I had a ton of fun working in the printmaking department, and yeah, exploring new things and some old things as well. It's been great. That's all. Thanks so much to everybody here in this room. This is part of the group, but it's been a really great. It's been a great group, and I appreciate my teachers and colleagues. Thanks so much, guys. Danielle.
I think a lot of your narrative here, to me, seemed like you operated kind of as we explore in different ways, and then kind of not filling, but I guess filling what that meant to you, or thinking more about the theoretical side of it, kind of as that came, and not vice versa. I'm interested about how now you seem to be taking time to dissect the parts of your painting that are interesting to you. How does that feel? And how do you think that will change your process going forward? Do you think you'll continue to, deal with and work with subject matter or paint things that are visually, or do you think you'll look to have more of your able backing stuff before you approach?
Sure. Yeah. I certainly think that part of what I got from that was that, like, yeah, I've done a lot of paintings just of everything, and then kind of in hindsight been able to look back on what really was effective for, or what was more meaningful. And so, yeah, I think maybe going forward, I have a better idea of where to start, opposed to, working in reverse like that. I do think that a lot of the stuff I've done and that I will continue to do is largely like expressionist kind of style. I meant to say that in my influences part. Like, I've been very influenced by expressionist painters and impressionist and post-impressionist painters. Like, so oftentimes the kind of meaning, or like, I don't know, maybe the values going into the paintings, like you're kind of talking about, have more to do with just the expressionist, emotive quality of the work. And yeah, I think I know how to approach that better now. Yeah, you said I was like kind of exploring also in your question. And I think that that's similar to what I was saying. I've done a lot of exploring, and now I can really reflect on it in post better. Yeah. Ellie, I don't know if it was her. Sorry.
I've always thought your work really looked like the work you
Hmm.
At what stage did you find his work? And was it like something you recognized his work in yours, or was it something that you were influenced?
Yeah. I discovered him when I was first doing like a bunch of research in college. So like right after I had declared my major, I wasn't sure I was going to be our major, and then I decided, and then sort of dove into it and was like, who should I kind of like look to? And so I found him pretty early on, and I guess I had seen his work before, but it was around then in college that I started to really appreciate his work. And I certainly do think that I took after him, but some of the stuff I was doing before was kind of related. I think that his like style was something that I already felt connected to, and so I had maybe been doing that sort of thing on my own. But to see such like a established and famous artist, who was way beyond where I was, definitely like made me lean into it more and made me start to emulate him a lot. And I definitely do. Were you gonna say, Deb?
Yes, I've always been really impressed by your line quality, the beauty of your linear drawing and mark making. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your process. Is it very spontaneous as you're looking? Do you plan out your paintings and your composition, or are you kind of like going with what's coming to you as you do the work?
Well, it's nice to do the kind of line stuff in a couple different ways. I mean, I do that stuff like on its own a lot, and just practice doing that, not in like a finished way. But then when I'm doing work, especially like the portrait work that then incorporates the line work, usually it is fairly planned out, and it just has to do with the composition and the kind of mood of the piece, and of the like atmosphere, color of the piece. I want to like further it by adding line work that usually is pretty planned out. I mean, I'm sketching first, and then sometimes starting over, erasing entirely. But the process of doing that line work in the finished way with paint is pretty like precise and painstaking. So I think there's a lot of thought going into it most of the time. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you see any relationship between all of your different subject matter that you've worked on during the year, like the landscapes and the figure and so on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I like to think that there is a connection between even like the farthest points, like, you know, figures like in a vacuum, and then like landscapes being like this, like it couldn't be any farther apart. But I like to think that there is some similarity in terms of we talked in some of our critiques in the residency about how I was treating a lot of the spaces in the landscapes in in a way where I was like using them as a like an entity to just explore color. So like even things like trees would maybe just, you know, use as a reason to throw a bunch of like unorthodox colors and, you know, make it expressive in some way, or make the just make the surface of the space look personal. I'm not sure. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.